and this is Chad from Canada. Hello, Chad. You're up next.
Hey Bart, can you hear me okay?
I can, and I have to say, if people listen to the CLP podcast, I actually gave a shout out to Chad V from Calgary, who has taken advantage of emailing me a spot pretty much every week. And the issue was that when I was trying to do this 6 months ago, it became somewhat overwhelming. And because Chad did it every single week, he sort of got the bad end of it because he wouldn't get the highest priority from me because he had gotten so many responses. And I'm almost actually caught up, although I did change it to once every other week. But I always constantly think of you, Chad, when I'm doing these responses.
Well, I really appreciate the feedback on the hands, Bart. Sorry
No
that I
worries. No, no,
bombed
not
your
at
email
all.
too much.
Not at all. So you got a hand for us now?
Yeah, I sure do. So actually, I was a 2-5 game at Casino Regina, which is not too far from Calgary, but it's in Saskatchewan.
Yes, Casino Regina. The other place I know in Saskatchewan, of course, is Saskatoon,
Yes,
right?
yeah, the
And
two big
that's
cities.
that's kind of like cowboy country over there in Canada, isn't it?
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit. Route areas here, yeah.
2-5, right? 2-5.
Yeah, 2-5. We don't normally have sort of a consistent 2-5 at Casino Regina, but there was a big tournament underway. And so we had a bunch of out of town players in for the week.
Okay, and just like that Reddit thread, I'll say that I've been to the Deerfoot in Calgary. I did the Canadian Open Poker Championship 1 year, so I've played in Vancouver, but that's about as close as I've been to Regina, besides a transcontinental Canadian cross country trip I took when I was 9 years old. All right, so this is a 1K cap game.
Yeah, 1K cap.
All right.
Most players had sort of around that amount.
Okay.
1,050 effective with the main villain,
Okay. 1,050 effective.
and it was nine-handed.
Okay.
So we can jump into it here. So I was
Sure.
under the and I raised to $20 with Queen of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds.
So hero under the gun to 20 with Queen of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds. Okay.
And that was pretty standard. I just got to the table maybe 20 minutes prior, but that sort of seemed to be a standard open, 15 or 20.
Yep. Okay.
So then the hijack called
Mm-hmm.
and the button three bet to $85.
So button three bets to $85 here.
And so here's the first decision point, I guess. I was trying to figure out, should I call here? Should I four bet or should I shove? And the stack sizes are a bit awkward because I was out of position.
Uh-huh.
So I was if I four bet, it'd have to be something like 340, which is sort of borderline breaking the pre-flop threshold. And I wondered if shoving might be a bit of an overplay, so I ended up just calling.
Yeah, this one's really close, right? Because when we talk about the pre-flop threshold, and I think I've said in some of my material a little bit sort of on the deeper end of where we should be, because the pre-flop threshold, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the live stream thing, like, here we go, in order here. It kind of looks weird on my screen. Pre-flop threshold would say that when you're breaking basically an amount where you are always going to call off. Now, I've said that that's like 33%, 35%. I actually think that's a little bit high. It's more like 28 to 30%. You're really trying to find the amount where there is at least there is some fold equity when your opponent can go back over the top. Like the theory goes, if you were to four bet here, if your opponent knows you're always going to call off, it's better to just shove. But if you can get in less than 30% of your stack, that means that when the pot odds come back to you, you're going to be getting like less than 2.2 to 1, and you can find a fold. So one of the small stakes exploits on CLP, of course, is that you can break that threshold with big hands like aces and kings because people don't even know. Like sometimes you can put it in half your stack because people aren't even really paying attention. Anyways, this one's kind of awkward because you've got obviously you're incentivized to four bet here pre because you've got this field caller in there, and you probably could go to like 325 to 340 to get the guy out of there. I mean, that's what I mean. 85. Well, I mean, even if you just do a straight 3x, it's really only 250. So I think you have enough stack depth. I mean, you don't have to go 4x here from out of position. You could go to 300 here, I think, rather easily. The question then becomes, are you going to fold? I don't know how familiar you are with the button. Like, is this a four bet fold for value? So it gets a little bit in between. We sometimes think about this with like jacks or something like that.
Yeah, the button was completely unknown to me. He was from out of town, and I hadn't played any hands with him or really even seen him. He sort of looked competent, I guess, but you know how much can you tell from 10 minutes of looking at a guy? So
So does that bring the hijack in too?
no, so I called in the hijack folded.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
and so
that's
the pot
good.
191. So that would be your preferred approach then, Bart, is just to kind of do it sort of around
I
that
mean, I
dollar
think you
amount.
do have enough stack depth to four bet here. I
Okay.
think I definitely. I mean, like, as people are saying in the live chat, like you can easily make this 250 to 275. I think I probably would have done that. I don't know how familiar you said you weren't familiar with the button here.
Not at all. Yeah, I didn't know who he was.
I mean, if I'm gonna four bet here to like 270 and he shoves, I probably want to get prepped to fold. So if I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
I probably will call. I mean, it's not a disaster when you play it, three handed. It's not like it's five handed or something like that. But okay, so we're 190 to the flop here.
Yeah. So then the flop comes out monotone. So it's ten of spades, seven of
Uh huh.
spades, two of spades.
Okay, and you've got red queens.
That's right.
Okay, yep,
So I checked to the button because he was the three better,
yep.
and he went ahead and checked back.
Okay, so button checks behind.
Yeah.
It's interesting here. If the button ever checks behind some overpairs for a little bit of pot control, because you would think, most of the hands that are three bet here, I would say mostly. Now he could be throwing in a squeeze, but most of the unpaired hands that are three bet consist of what? Chad, what do you think? What's the main hand that's unpaired?
Well, ace king.
Ace king, right? And you would think that ace king here with a spade would do some betting. Now, ace king, maybe king of spades checks behind. It's also possible that he could have just whiffed with a red ace king and he's just choosing, not to see bet. On a monotone
Right.
board, he can still probably do a lot of small betting and sort of just fold you off, a fair amount of equity. I'm not super familiar right off the top of my head how often a unpaired non-spade sort of on a monotone board would be bet in this configuration, but you can probably always go for small sizing. Heads up, it probably can't be that bad, but I'm just thinking out loud. So it goes check check. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So then the turn comes along. It's a total blank. It's the three of hearts.
Okay.
So I checked again, basically, sort of for pot control, I guess,
Interesting. Okay.
just because I didn't want to get raised and it's just being sort of cautious. And then the button bet 200, which is full pot size bet.
Wow. So he checks back and now he bets 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting how I would play this one from up front because normally at this level, I'm not seeing a whole lot of people check back that many overpairs here for pot control in a three bet pot. It would seem to me that I would have the best hand here a lot of time. I feel like when it goes check check, even with a red overpair, and I might want to do some protection slash value betting, and I might just come out and bet 60 to 75 here from up front. I feel like I would do that a lot. Now, I don't think that checking is necessarily terrible, but that's just sort of my thought. Now, it's interesting that he responded here with 200. I mean, I think you have to call, but it's really, really strange.
Yeah, it is strange and kind of what was going through my head. I don't play a lot of 2-5, but a lot of the people I play with at 1-2, they'll quite often, if they had a straight on the flop or
A
a
flush.
flush, they would try and trap, right? So I was feeling a bit nervous.
Yeah, but you can't be scared of monsters under the bed, right? Because how many flushes?
No,
How many flushes is he going to flop? It's going to be mostly high pairs, right?
right,
Or
right.
unpaired ace can't. You know what I mean? So, and
Yeah,
it's just kind of it's kind of weird, but yeah, it's if he has got ace king with the king of spades and he checks back, I mean the only thing that's concerning to me is that a lot of times that hand will continue to check through. If I checked back ace king with the king of spades, I probably would continue to check through on turn, but I mean I think you obviously have to call, but it is a little bizarre.
Yeah, I knew it was too strong to fold for sure. Because I mean, he would do that with any kind of good flush draw, like you said, with an ace of spades.
Josh Shepard says it sounds like red kings or red aces or red jacks to me. I mean, it's possible. Of course, red jacks needs more protection. So you called?
Yeah, I called.
Okay, so now we're at 590.
Yeah, 590.
Okay,
I've got about 765 behind. I was the effective stack.
okay.
And then the river was pretty interesting. So it was the queen of clubs, which gives me a set.
So it's the queen of clubs. Wow, that is so you make a hidden set here.
Yes, yeah.
So the question really becomes, logically, and I've said this before many times in the past, is that if you play your hand in theory, if you're playing your hand as a bluff catcher, then sometimes when you run into a strong hand, you're still supposed to play it as a bluff catcher. But my question to you and to everybody else there in the live chat, though, is that is Chad necessarily always playing it as a bluff catcher? And does this river warrant some leads because of the fact that red aces and red kings might check it back? Now, you can sometimes get the best of both worlds when you're up against a good player that might bluff and also value own themselves, meaning that they will value bet a hand so that you don't lose the value here. My take here is that I don't think he has a flop flush all that much given the line. If he flopped, for example, the nut flush, right, which is probably the good chunk of flushes that can get comprised here from a 3-bet, I don't know if he goes 200 on turn. I mean, this is talking about like a check back on flop and then pot turn. It kind of seems like a protection type of bet here. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I want to take the lead, talking about taking the lead away sometimes. And people can say, "Oh, that's unbalanced. That's unbalanced. How do you lead river there?" Well, the reason why is, as if you say like as an exploit, is because hands will call that are otherwise going to check back here.
Right. Yeah, and in retrospect, so at the time, I was like, well, I'm either way behind or way ahead, and I was nervous about getting sort of shoved on. But in retrospect, I was thinking, maybe I should have made a small value bet on the river, like just something small, to a couple hundred, and then raises or shoves I can fold. But
Well, that would be, boy, I don't know if man bet. I mean, that's some of the hands that we've had with stiff ace of spades and stuff is crazy. I don't, man, I don't know if you can bet fold. Now, Tomato Soup in the live chat says, give him a chance to bluff ace king with spade, bro. And I mean, I suppose that might have some credence if the opponent thinks that Chad is holding on with some sort of pair like eights or nines where the queen is, kind of a scare card. I don't know how you'd be surprised how underbluffed ace king is in these types of spots. And the other thing too is that I still think that a lot of red aces, red kings, and maybe red jacks check behind where otherwise you might be able to get a call. I might go like, what's 40%? Like 240, 220 to 240, something like that here at the end. What did you do?
yeah, so I ended up checking and check, evaluate,
Uh-huh.
and thought he might take a stab at it, but he ended up checking behind.
And then did you ever find out what he had?
Yeah, I did. So when he checked back, I flipped over my queens, and he flipped over king of spades, king of diamonds.
Oh man, see that's
Yeah,
okay. So he checked back a black. He's checked back kings with a king of spades here too, which sometimes can be represented. I mean, that can sometimes be represented as well. I'm trying to put myself in his spot here. Like that's a pretty tight, right? That's kind of a pretty tight check back, but it just doesn't surprise me that these guys will check that back as opposed to like a small bet.
turn bet was surprising to me too, because what's he really afraid of? To bet that big when he's got the king of spades? Like you would think he would bet maybe small on the flop and then small on.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of want to. I mean, one of the things that for whatever reason, maybe it's human nature that really has not changed, or some of these betting patterns at the recreational level. I think that's really my bread and butter and sort of figuring it out. It just, you know, people are at different stages. They fall into the same types of betting patterns. I don't know if it's human nature, and it would be shocking to me if this was a flop flush because of the check back and then pot. If you had told me he checked it back and then he bet like 1/3 and he was trying to rope you in, that would be more indicative. So
Right.
that's why I take the lead away here, just because you're putting it all together with the bet sizing. But it's an interesting one, Chad. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback.
All right, Chad. Thank you very much.